things. So slow. It's not like doing anything. I'm trying to get these people to join it.
Okay. Let's see. First.
Hello, Gary.
Hello, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Hello, Gino. You need to turn on your video there. Hello, Cheryl. And Tony, you guys need to.
Tony.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you guys?
All right. Trying to get everybody in here. So let's see.
Mr. Dr. Ray, back from the Bluegrass State.
Who was in the Bluegrass Strait? Oh, Craig?
Yeah,
Michael,
Michael.
if you could turn on your video. And let's see, Gene, we need you to turn on your video as well.
Mute your speakers. Okay. Unmute. Hello.
Hello, Michael. There you are.
Hey, howdy doody.
How
Hello.
are you?
I'm good. Hello to everyone.
Hello, you having a good trip?
Yeah, it was really nice. It was absolutely gorgeous down there. You know, the leaves were turning colors and just stunning. And good to see the grandkid. Hey, Cheryl, what's shaking?
Not much, Michael. Glad to see you.
Hey, we almost match. Almost.
Almost.
Oh, isn't this the official swearing in color?
Yeah, I got the special swearing in oath. Gary told me today he's gonna first they're gonna swear at us and then we'll do the planning. Tony, how are you?
Doing good, Michael. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for your feedback.
Oh yeah, hey, you know, a no-win situation, right?
Unbelievable.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
Doesn't make you feel very good, does it?
No. It just
Well, you know what they say, no good deed goes unpunished.
I hope
Actually-
so.
Well, let's all remember that we're being recorded here, so.
Well, we didn't
That's
say
fine.
anything. That's fine.
I know.
But thank you.
You know, we never say anything, right?
Ah,
Like
Yeah.
I said, we're being recorded here.
Okay. Gary's a bum. Oh, so sorry.
Hi, Stacy.
Hello. Hi, Mayor. How are you? Hi, Cheryl.
Thanks, and you.
Hey, Stacy.
Hey,
Hi,
Stace.
Jane.
Does it still say Jane? Oh,
Yeah.
I got to change that. I think I know how after.
That's okay, Jane. We don't mind. We'll just call you Jane.
Oh, I got
Hi,
to
Steve.
rename.
Hi, all.
There we go.
Hey, Stacy. Hey, Steve.
Hi, Michael.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Stacy.
There's John. When John came on, he had like a halo around his head. I was getting, concerned. Hey, John.
What's
Very good.
today?
Hi, everybody.
Is today the 18th?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
So we must be in Carefree.
Yes. I saw Vince earlier. The Cave Creek Museum had an event, so he was very busy. He was going to try and make it here on time. I have not heard anything from Steve that he won't be participating today.
I think Gene will be here. Oh, there he is. Okay,
Yeah,
excellent.
I must have went on automatic. I walked in the house and I hear voices. I pulled my gun out.
Yeah.
You need to turn a light on in that house,
Gino,
Gene.
yours is, yeah, your photo is typically very, very dark.
Let's have a
Yeah.
silhouette.
The light
Michael, you're
behind
on-
is,
You're muted, Michael. You're muted.
Thank you.
I saw you talking. Was it anything important?
I just told Gene that there's medication for when you hear voices.
Oh,
but I get answers.
That's even
Okay.
worse, just so you know.
I have another minute to go on my watch, so
Yes, I do
a
too.
minute.
Code of conduct. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Mike, I'm taking my medication.
Is it in the glass? Okay, that's the best kind.
Yeah. Okay. Good as any. Oh,
Who's in?
Candace, are you ready?
we're missing a few people.
Yes, let's give it a minute. Michael, could you hum or sing something?
Sure.
Eric, this is Candace. Worst case scenario is I could have those two individuals come into my office. It's not the best way to do it, but I'd like to do everybody at the same time. But if they're not sworn in, they can't vote on anything on the agenda until they are.
Oh,
So
oh,
Excellent.
I don't know. I think it's all discussion today, so.
Right, there is no
yeah.
no vote today.
However, if they're not here, maybe we could do a special vote of some sort.
Vince is joining us right now, so
Okay, good. Hello, Vince.
hey, Vince.
Hey, guys.
All we need
So
is,
we are awaiting Mr. Hatcher, I believe.
For who? Oh,
I'll text him.
he just goes on to Zoom and puts that in and he's on. Steve's coming.
Okay.
Nice haircut, Vince.
Oh, thank you.
I think I saw you sitting in the barber chair. Yes, was it yesterday?
No, it's that wasn't me, but it's probably been about 3 weeks, but thanks for noticing.
Well, somebody who is just as handsome as you.
Yeah, somebody, yeah. There you go.
You have a doppelganger.
It's hard to believe, but I mean, Frankie Valli, Eric Estrada, I mean, you name it. There's some handsome guys out there, so.
Fewer and fewer.
I'll let that one go, Vince.
Well, should we go and we can let Mr. Well, if Michael, did Stephen say he was getting on?
He's coming on right now. Mayor, he's coming on right now.
Okay,
Hello.
Ask him what number he's coming on as, because I have other folks on here that,
Okay.
is he coming under his name?
Oh.
Oh, I see him now.
Okay.
Hey, Gary, my folks wanted to know if this was being recorded.
Yes.
It is being recorded through Zoom, yes.
Oh, that archive that they can go back and watch it later. Apparently they were too busy at the casino right now to take time out and see their son get sworn in.
Ooh,
hey,
Priorities.
Mr. Hatcher, how are you, sir?
Priorities.
Oh, there he is.
Steve-O.
Okay, Candace, are we ready?
Yes, we are, Mayor.
I
Light
think
it
so.
up.
I'd like to call this special meeting of the Carefree Town Council to order. This November 18th, 2020. Silent roll call. I believe we've already done that. Pledge of Allegiance. Cheryl, would you lead us, please, in the pledge?
Sure. I
Pledge
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 allegiance
allegiance
to
to
the
the flag
Flag,
of the United States of America,
United
to the
States of
republic
America,
for which
Which
it stands, one
Republic,
one
nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
for all.
Man,
Well,
sounded
that was-
like a dysfunctional school group.
Really?
It's a bad choir.
Miss Smith's second grade could do it more in unison. Number one, the swearing in ceremony.
Oh.
I wonder if I might turn this over to Candace. I believe each of you have received from Candace the official document evidencing that you're on the town council, as well as the code of conduct. But I wonder if I could turn it over to Candace now.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We're going to do this a little bit differently because of Zoom, and to make it a little less chaotic for everyone involved, the Pledge of Allegiance being an example. What I'll do, which is traditional, is swear in the mayor separately, and he'll go first. Then what we thought we would do is, rather than have everybody read the oath, is I will call out each of you and you will say yes. And then I will continue the oath. You will raise your right hand. I will continue the oath until we get to the end where we say, so help me God. And then you can all just say your name again with your hands raised. And that way we don't have everybody reading it. I'll read it for you. Does that work for everyone?
Sure.
Sounds good.
All right. Mayor, I'd like to start with you, please. If you'd raise your right
Okay.
hand. Thank you. I, Les Peterson, do solemnly.
Oh, you want me to repeat it?
Yeah, no need. Do solemnly swear
Okay.
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to same and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of mayor of the town of Carefree, Arizona, according to the best of my ability. So help me God. Mayor Les Peterson, do you agree?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Next, may I please have John Crane, Vince D'Alicio, Tony Geiger, Stephen Hatcher, Cheryl Croyer, and Michael Craig. Would you all please raise your right hand? I state your name, please.
John
Mike
Crane.
Frank,
Cheryl Croyer,
Steve Hatcher,
Thank you. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the town council member of the town of Carefree, Arizona, according to the best of my ability. So help me God. Do you agree?
Yes.
Yes.
So swear.
Congratulations, Mayor and Council, for 2 years of service.
Thank you, Candace.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, number one, and again, if I might ask each of you, if you haven't done so already, there's a code of conduct, which Candace will have over in her office. We should each and every one of us sign that as well. The second, or really the first item on the regular agenda is recognition for outgoing council member Gene Arricchio. 5.5 years on the council. He has done yeoman work in terms of working with our merchants and trying to keep our spirits up. He has been a party and a part of some of the travails that the council has gone through and discussions, et cetera. And I personally want to thank Gene, and I'd like to read, and it is in development. It's certainly it'll be a gold-plated plaque, which we'll be presenting to him, which is not here yet. It's so heavy, no one could lift it. But what it reads, the town of Carefree presented to Gene Arricchio in grateful recognition for your hard work and dedicated service to the town of Carefree as a council member from March of 2015 through November of 2020. So we'll be putting that in a plaque. And Candace, when do you think that will be available?
Next week.
Next week, please stop by, and I'd like to shake your hand or knock elbows together and thank you for that. So thanks for all your service.
All of you guys. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Congratulations,
well done,
Tony.
Way to go, Gino.
Way to go, buddy.
Thank you.
Good job, Gino.
And thank Tony too. I know he'll do
Stay
a
in
great
touch,
job.
Gene.
Now, Gene, you won't be able to say, I move that we adjourn, but if you would like to say, I'd like to move on to item number 2.
I'd like to move on to item number 2.
Thank you. Item number 2, presentation and discussion regarding the town's strategic work plan for 2020 through 2022. If I could ask Michael Cray and Gary to take it away from here, please.
Actually, Mayor, I'll take the lead on this and try and move the box here. There we go. Does everybody see that slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Right, as we all know, this is the third public workshop that we held to discuss the development of an organizational strategic work plan for the next 24 months, being the next term on town council. At the first meeting, we discussed a SWOT analysis, the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats to Carefree. And then the second workshop, we followed that up with the common threads that were identified through this SWOT analysis. And that led us to the pillars to support the overall direction of this work plan. And we also hit upon the topic of vision statements. This workshop, I'd like to take the opportunity to bring everything to a cohesive end, hopefully, into a simple work plan. And that's what the product is in front of you. And in doing so, approximately 1 week ago, I shared with the council members this document that has a guiding principle, a value statement, and subsequent objectives and deliverables over the next 2 years. So this is essentially our work product that we hope to work with the council on in achieving. The overall guiding principle is a broader statement to the outside world. So generally outside of Carefree, that defines who we desire to be. The value statement is more specific to the Carefree residents and our businesses. It tells them, what we value. And the pillars are essentially how we're going to get there. And it wraps around the nucleus of what we're all about, which is a high quality of life. So more specifically, going into that guiding principle, it states, Carefree is a distinctive premier upper Sonoran Desert community that seeks to deliver high-quality lifestyle, experience-based retail destinations, and access to nearby expansive desert preserves and lakes. So this essentially defines to the outside world, why do I want to come up to Carefree? So it's that ecotourism, it's the experience of our retail that we're cultivating here, and it's the high quality of life. So those are the things that we hope will attract people up to Carefree. The value statement focuses more specifically, once again, on the local residents and businesses, and it states, Carefree's leadership is committed to providing a safe community with quality infrastructure and services within its limited financial capacity, minimizing tax liability on its residents. So there's no desire to tax our residents through a property tax. And this is a common thread I've heard through this and past councils. The idea is to generate retail sales tax, bring people up here. We only have approximately 4,000 people in this community. They can't sustain the community alone. So we rely on a broader market area to bring people up here. And so it's cultivating that tax base and diversifying that tax base to pay for the services to ensure that we have a safe community and ensure that we have quality infrastructure that supports our residential community. So how do we get there? And those are the pillars of the work plan and the common threads that we identified through the SWOT analysis. And they're aimed to maintain and improve upon the quality of life, the nucleus, once again, within the community. And that's quality development, infrastructure management, economic development, and organizational financial stability, and community engagement through marketing of our businesses and communication, both actively with our residents. Under each pillar are various tasks associated with the organizational work plan for the next 2 years. There are certainly additional items that can be added to this list, but this is meant to be kind of a high level, a 30,000 foot level evaluation of some of the tasks that we like to undertake over these next 24 months. The future strategic initiatives such as economic development discussion on the next agenda item will expand upon this outline. In addition, our future budget, which will be a program-based budget, will further expand upon these items too. So there's more detail coming to each one of these items. So don't look at this as a final list or a detailed list, but a high elevation. Basically, if the council is supportive of this outline of the work plan, the next step would be to take this plan to the next council meeting, next formal council meeting that is, and adopt it through a resolution. And then we post it on our website and through coins. And then we'll have regular or periodic check-ins to see during the course of each fiscal year where we are with each one of these pillars. So that being said, in a broad sense, is the work plan based upon the dialogue that we've had to date with the council and some of the elements that we hope to achieve or tasks that we hope to achieve over the next 2 years. So Mayor, members of the council, if there's more questions, I'll be glad to address them and go into a little bit more detail if you wish on the various tasks.
I'd like to thank you, Gary, for spearheading this along with Michael, with input from John and Cheryl as well. Too many times I've seen the strategic planning process. There are all these lofty goals that could mean 55 different things. And after we complete it, we put it away until the next time we do it, and we never look at it in between. I find that I work best from a project. These are things I want to accomplish. And without that, things just kind of float along. And what this becomes, this is what we are going to address. People will be involved in and responsible for over at least the next 2 years. And some of these will go longer than that. But I salute this is, let's take the principles and the value statement, translate it into how does that come to life? What should we be seeking to achieve? So I like this approach very, very well.
I'll just add a couple of comments. I want to thank everybody for, a lot of people put a lot of time and thought into getting this thing done, and I appreciate that. Gary, thank you for, we had a lot of conversations, you and I, and, you always listened, and I appreciate that. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about you, kind of in this whole process, and it was good. As the mayor said, this is I've done a lot of this stuff, and this is a good result. It's an excellent result because now we have the plan, and Gary and the town, can execute against it. So I'm just pleased as punch, and I want to thank everybody, and let's go get him, Gary.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more comments from the council associated with the plan?
I'll make a
Just-
motion
just
to move on.
One comment, and just for continuity purposes. So in our previous meetings, we talked about vision statements and mission statements. And now we've changed the description of each. But in my mind, if you look back, the guiding principle is kind of like the vision, and the value statement is kind of like the mission.
Yes.
And we've incorporated, and Michael and Gary have incorporated, I think, the key elements of those discussions, built them into those sentences, and then just relabeled the titles.
Good point, John. Yeah, and you're absolutely spot on. So I'll make a motion to move on.
Okay, Mayor, we will bring this back to council in December for ratification of this work plan. And certainly at that time too, in between, any citizen comments can be forwarded onto the town at Candace's email. Candace obviously is our town clerk and the custodian of the public record. So Candace@carefree.org. So any comments from the public can be forwarded on to her, and we'll make part of the public record when we consider it in December.
Good. The one other comment that I would make, and my silence before, as I was just thinking, and that is, if I could ask you, Gary, to comment upon it, we purposefully left off staffing. We now have Steve in to head up the economic development, financial stability area. There are some people with specific expertise from a staff level and from the council who should be associated with each one of these. And Gary, I might ask you just to talk about how that will unfold in each one of these areas, and then we'll bring this back in December.
Absolutely. Let me share the screen again. Technology, you gotta love it.
It's up now, Gary.
Okay. Trying to create this in a slide preview, but it's not going there. All right, so there's essentially 4 pillars. Pillar number 1 says quality community development. That falls under our general plan update. Stacy Bridge Denzek would be heading that up. We are coming up to our 10-year time increment in which we update that general plan. Stacy will be going out with a RFP or RFQ to get a consultant, as typical in the process, to help her with that general plan update. And that feeds into the general plan is kind of the foundation for everything we do from a development perspective. So the zoning ordinance, the building codes, our fee schedule, our design guidelines all feed into that. So we're going to be looking at, over the next 2 to 3 years, an update to our general plan. So in about 12 to 18 months, she'll start that RFP or RFQ process and headed that up. From an infrastructure management, many of you do not know, but we had a town engineer prior to the Great Recession, and that person was on contract. As a contract employee, he wasn't here full time, but we indeed paid a full-time price for that contract. And he did many things for us, included sealing many of our street maintenance plans, identifying capital improvement projects, working on flood control issues, and reviewing drainage plans. Since that time, we've had a contract with Greg Crossman, who also manages the water company, to act on a part-time role as our town engineer. Well, we have so many issues associated with our infrastructure as it ages in place that we have to get ahead of this and do some better planning. So it's time to reinvest in that position and hire full-time. There's quite a bit of work that we need to do with getting ahead of our street maintenance program and updating that. We did that back in 2012. Both DJ and I measured every street and don't want to say every crack, but it seemed like every crack in every street when it was 110 out. So got to know the streets well, but that's a very labor intensive process. And we need to start doing that to feed into the next 10 years of street maintenance program. So we need a focus on that effort. We need to update and identify capital projects over the next 5 years and even longer term as our infrastructure ages. The new requirement that we have in front of us and that I've articulated in the past is our separate municipal stormwater management plan, which we're required to do through the state and federal government as part of the Clean Water Act. And it's very, very, very labor intensive. Matter of fact, we had an audit about a year ago, sat down with the state probably about 9 hours one day to go through every piece of document that I generated associated with this. It's very labor intensive, a lot of paperwork associated with that and documentation. You need an engineer that oversees that. So what I'm leading to in this is we're going to be hiring a town engineer once again to oversee this and manage this. It's time that we have the workload there to have that town engineer to help coordinate that and coordinate the activities of the Public Works Department. Leading into economic development, the third pillar there, obviously, as we all know, we hired Steve last March to act as our first economic development person, and we'll go into that in a little bit more detail in our next agenda item. So I won't cover that and steal Steve's lightning there. The final one is the communication, marketing, and community engagement. And this is multifaceted. It deals with incorporating our businesses more proactively into the conversation of everything that we do, outreaching our residents in multiple ways. Obviously, we all know that we communicate in different ways and fashions and are comfortable at different levels, but the digital media is so powerful and can reach so many people in so different ways, and there's different shapes and forms. So there's an art to communication. And so having somebody that understands that art and deals in the social media realm is important and critical to our success in communicating the projects that we're working on, the issues that we're confronted with, and engaging the community. And one of the things that we heard throughout these dialogues and throughout the last election is let's look at improving the engagement with the citizens. So that will be the focus of this area. And as you all know, I shared with you approximately a month ago a job description for this position. We are now advertising that position and really have gotten some very good talent. I'm really pleased with the folks that are coming to the table and showing interest in this position. So we're looking at bringing a person online to help with the execution elements of that program sometime after the first of the calendar year. So Mayor, that's a little bit about the dimension with the staffing associated with each one of those pillars.
Good, thank you. And I would encourage all of us, take a look at those pillars, and if where your interests lie and you'd like to become involved, please do so. John,
Gary?
you're going to say something.
Just a comment, Gary. So the public safety is about 40% of what we do. So how is public safety reflected in these pillars? Where does it fit?
Yeah, but public safety is certainly an important part. It's part of our quality of life. It's something that is not discussed at that point in time. It's a contract position that kind of falls under my department itself and its coordination. There's discussion right now with MCSO and private vendors about photo radar and improving safety there. I'm part of that. So not everything is incorporated in there, There's also discussion with some of our neighboring communities with emergency service and automatic aid. And we've started conversations with Scottsdale. In 18 months, our contract with Rural Metro is due to expire. So that will be part of the work plan and elements that I bring forth to the council. And we'll probably have some working committees working with me, some citizen working committees on those respective issues. So that's not defined in this program, but not everything is within that program. These are new elements that we're bringing into the community at this point in time. So not to diminish those conversations will be had and are an important element to what we'll be doing in the future. But those are what I would say is value added, not changes to what we've been doing in the past. What we've outlined here is some strategic changes to how we've done business in the past. And that's what we're trying to outline in this new work plan.
Okay.
Thank you, Gary. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, so
I have a question.
go ahead, Steve.
Pardon me, John. I remember discussing this whole thing with infrastructure and drainage and so forth. Are there some state funds to support that? Because that's as you said, very time intensive, labor intensive process we have to go through.
I would love to tap into some funds at the state level. Unfortunately, there are not, and it's one of those things. There's several working committees on this. Some small communities. There's communities on the west side and east side of the metropolitan area. They're all forming their own entities. They're all faced with the same thing. These are unfunded mandates. There's communities such as Scottsdale that have adopted a fee in association, for example, with their water bills. And if one gets a water bill from the city of Scottsdale, you will see a stormwater management fee. That's to fund the program within the city of Scottsdale and generates north of $1 million a year for, I think, 25 cents per water bill. So there are mechanisms that larger communities have to fund these things, but smaller communities, there isn't that funding there. So it's something that's frustrating to me. It's one of those unfunded mandates that are passed on to these smaller communities. And the same standard that applies to Phoenix applies to the town of Carefree. So it's not an equitable approach, but it's something that, you know, the Clean Water Act, they judge it all the same way. The washes all feed into, you know, one larger wash, and you know, upstream contamination will contaminate the overall system. So they're trying to manage that. And unfortunately, there isn't dedicated funding at this time at the state level or federal level.
No way to share that cost?
Not at this time, no.
John?
Yeah, so the plan going forward is we're going to bring this before council in the December meeting, December 1st.
Yeah, is it December 1st is the?
December.
December 1st. Yes.
Whatever it is in December.
And
Yes.
so when it comes before council, what will we do?
We will have a resolution attached this, and we will adopt this by resolution.
Okay. And between now and then, the public is encouraged to weigh in and comment.
Yes, yes.
I mean, it's not a
Some of
lot
the
of
discussions,
comment.
some of the discussions, John, we've had is perhaps a subset of us will take this page and take a table over at the post office, or we'll publish it in coins. We'll try and get it distributed broadly, make people aware of it, and seek their input in advance of that meeting.
Exactly right. That's what I was. We need to do that, and great idea.
Just
Okay,
one
thank you.
more question, Gary. Do we have to submit a report to the state on all this irrigation and contamination and all that jazz?
The MS4, yes, there's a process online through Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. They have a portal dedicated to this, where I quarterly have to enter into a database the various inspections I make. And then the annual report probably takes me about a week to a week and a half to go through each and every screen and import the data that I generate during the course of the year. So once again, a lot of paper trail behind it. And then at the end of the year, you have to do that data dump online.
And we get to send them an invoice.
No, actually, just the opposite. They send us an invoice of $2,000 a year to manage this program. So
Just-
it costs us.
It's a privilege.
That's because they care.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Gary is usually very upbeat in the office. And on the days when he's filling this out, I'll hang a black flag out up front and then don't come in. Okay, anything else on number 2?
No.
Thank you. Item number 3, presentation and discussion regarding the economic development component of the town's strategic work plan. Gary and Steve, I wonder if I could ask you.
All right. Yes, Mayor, this is going to be a coordinated effort between Steve and myself. And Steve, I made you co-host, so if you can share your screen and then pull up the PowerPoint presentation.
Sure.
See how this works.
Yeah, and just before I get started, I just want to say, thanks to Gene. I know you're heading out, but I really appreciate all your input that you put into this, and I really appreciate working with you. And I hope we continue to get to work together about moving in the forward.
We will.
And just to also say, this was a very, very interesting start to a job, being hired on March 16th and sent home on the 18th and working through COVID. But again, I really appreciate, not only the staff that I've been able to work with, but the members of the community, and some of them are actually, listening in here as well. And I want to thank them as well for all their participation and being able to, give me their advice and input. So.
You're stealing my thunder here, Steve.
Ooh.
I like to echo your remarks on Gene. I didn't comment on that, but Gene, it's been 5.5 years, and I appreciate everything and working with you. You're always quick to assist and look for ways of building a better community, and that's something rare. And I appreciate everything that you've done for the organization and our community.
Thanks so much, Gary, and I appreciate working with all you wonderful, wonderful people, and if ever I can do anything, I'm a phone call away.
Hey, Gino, we really appreciate you taking us all out to dinner too.
Steve, I figured that one, the guy with the most amount of money.
All right, we have quite a few things to talk about here. Steve has about 400 slides that he wants to share. So
Before we do, I just want to say one last thing also to Councilman Arico, as the other Mediterranean on the council and the new guy until today, at least. I wanted to thank you for your mentorship and sitting next to me on the dais, and look forward to dealing with you for many years to come as a neighbor.
God bless. Thank you so much, Vince.
Yep, good job, Gene.
Go get him, Steve.
Thank
All
you.
right,
So can you guys see my slides?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I wasn't sure what you could see and what you couldn't see. So, again,
So
yeah.
let me start, Steve, and then I'll pass the baton on to you if that's okay.
Yep.
Okay. Last fall, as we all know, the town outlined a plan to pivot from producing large events and focus on economic development initiatives to diversify our tax base. And in doing so, we hired an economic development director, now known as Steve, to focus on strategic initiatives in the diversification and enhancement of our tax base. As history will tell us, and Steve alluded to, he came on board at the same time our lovely pandemic hit. And therefore, Steve's attention turned to assisting businesses to address the economic and financial implications brought on by this once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. I don't think any of us faced something like this before, and it certainly left collateral damage to many businesses, not only locally and throughout the state, but throughout the nation and the world. This gave Steve more time to actually roll up his sleeves and build relationships with the business interest and nonprofits and investors and other interests in the market area to cultivate a strategic outlook or plan that he'll be discussing with the council tonight. It's first important to understand what the target is with economic development, and the basic definition of economic development on a very simplistic stage is wealth generation. And so for the purpose of discussion this afternoon, that definition is specific to sales tax generation to offset cost of core municipal services to maintain the town's infrastructure and maintain the town infrastructure over time. So that's what we're looking at in the town of Carefree. And as outlined in this slide, over the next 10-year, our target for economic development efforts is to generate an additional $3 to $3.5 million annually within approximately 10 years. Now, this is not an arbitrary figure. That the revenue is generated by us analyzing various things, beginning with inflationary increases. And I can't tell you the number of times I sat through league meetings and manager meetings and other meetings in which an economist starts off the meeting and states the state of the world, the state of the national economy, the state of the state economy. And he said that they say that the rate of everything goes up 3% per year. And so just using that figure of 3% a year and projecting out our operational costs, that would result in a inflationary increase on our operational costs of approximately $1.8 million over a 10-year period. Now, this is a compounded rate, but just benchmark that. Costs keep on increasing for the services that we provide. We're not a large organization as far as the level of services that we provide, but those inflationary increases impact everything that we do. And just the master fire contract goes up 2.5% per year. We can see those increases throughout the organization on an annual basis. We also have additional loss in revenue. As the community reaches build out, there's less construction sales tax from new homes. And so this decline in the construction sales tax will amount to a loss in revenue to the town. And as the town was building out, we were collecting anywhere between $400 upwards to over $1 million a year by new homes. As we reach build out, we're not going to be generating the tax that we received before with that new home construction. So we have to anticipate that decline. Compounding that decline is the proportional decrease in the state share revenue. As the population of the metropolitan areas and the state communities around us grow, Carefree is not growing proportionally like they are. So our resulting proportional share will be reduced. So if you take those two factors combined, we will lose a projected $400,000 by the end of this 10-year timeline. So now we're at approximately $2.2 million in revenue that we need to generate just to be even. The third component is our infrastructure. And we have to look at our infrastructure, just like you look at your own home and you do updates to your kitchens and bathrooms, you paint the walls, you invest over time in those. And as your home ages, those expenses don't go away. In many cases, they get more expensive. Well, if you take that analogy and you compare it to our infrastructure is aging in place. It's not getting younger. And that useful life cycle decreases over time. So we have to project out that there'll be replacement of certain infrastructure. There'll be costly repairs as this infrastructure gets even older. And so we need to prepare to allocate additional resources to invest in those. And that's part of that engineering position, is to further evaluate our infrastructure and better project over the next 5 to 10 years those respective investments. But right now we're anticipating at that end of the 10 years, we should be putting aside about $1 million a year investing in our infrastructure. So you're at between $3 and $3.5 million. So those are the attributes that are contributing to the need to generate $3 to $3.5 million. Now, certainly, one answer is a property tax, and a property tax of 2 to 2.5% could generate sufficient revenue. Obviously, as we discussed in the work plan and the value, there isn't the vision of assessing a property tax. We want to diversify our tax base to pay for these services in the future and generate money to deal with this structural deficit in the future. And so that's what this economic development plan is about. And Steve's going to discuss essentially how do we get there. So that is the plan for tonight, and he has quite a few slides to articulate to the council. This is meant to be a conversation, so don't be afraid to interrupt Steve, and I'll provide color commentary as necessary, but I'll pass the baton on to Steve, and he'll begin going through the rest of the slides here.
Hey, Gary, I've got a question before we leave this slide. That last bullet says, we're going to need approximately 60 acres of dedicated buildable commercial land. Do we have that much buildable available land?
Yes, and Steve will expand upon that bullet. This is meant to be high
Okay.
elevation. I didn't
Thank you.
touch upon that, but yes, we do.
Okay, let her rip.
Yeah, and Michael, and thanks for asking that. And Gary, thanks for the intro. And obviously you can see, just by the nature of how we're looking to fund our future, it's necessary that we look at retail. And, just like anything, there's going to be trade-offs. If we're going to have more retail, then that, obviously creates other additional problems that the community faces. And so as I go through this, I kind of keep those things in mind as well. And that's additional traffic, additional parking, additional, impacts to our infrastructure and those types of things. And so, and in some cases, our residents don't like those. But again, as we make decisions as leaders of the community and we try to seek input, everything's going to have a trade-off and a balance. So as I look at this moving forward, you see that I use the equivalent in this last bullet point of 390,000 square feet of retail. That's just generally an equivalency because, we really haven't defined what the uses are. I've kind of said, okay, let's just take shopping center and, and just using some of the standards in the industry as far as, what those standards are for floor area ratio coverages or our land intensity. Our land is a little bit more difficult to develop because it's in the natural desert, will require, there's a lot more washes to deal with. So we will have a lot less lot coverage. And so those things have all been kind of, looked at, and I'm taking kind of a conservative approach as just to keep that in mind. So I'm not saying it's going to be specifically one retail or another, but just to kind of give you an idea of what that would look like. And again, when we look at economic development, and as far as my career goes, a large portion of what economic development is job creation. And that's not something that we're definitely, really interested in. Not that we don't want to have opportunities for people to be able to work in Carefree. It's not one of the community though where we're faced with a lot of people who are, are looking for careers and looking for jobs. In a lot of cases, we're pretty well off as far as people who are employed or are retired. And so I'm going to, not really focus on the office and industrial pieces because I think our office is fairly sufficient. There's things that we still can do to improve that, but it's not anything that's going to, make or break the town. And it really kind of goes down to the idea of what Gary said, that this is about retail revenue and, and how we drive that. And, but before I do go into that, I do want to just get the events and activities thing out of the way, because that's always kind of the thing that gets brought up. And we've put so much emphasis in the past on events and activities. And in my thought is, and after dealing, talking with a lot of folks, is as we look at events and activities, is one, the town for the most part is going to get out of producing large events. And we're not, the town itself will not be engaged in that. And that when we look at events, and the types of events that people are going to want to bring into this community, they have to fit in with the scale of that event. Is it going to be supported generally by the businesses in the community, as an event that would occur here? And as we look at activities, the use of the Sanderson Lincoln Pavilion, we really need to maximize the use of that because, it is a great economic engine that we can bring in people. But again, it has to be complementary to, what's going on inside the town. And so we need to be in constant contact with our businesses and the residents that live in the area. And then the other side of the events and activities, is the community-based activities, the Zumba and the yoga and all those types of things, the holiday events, Christmas and Hanukkah and those. So we'll continue to keep working on those. And again, some of those things we will, I guess we'll call it produce, but they're going to be more community-based. And we'll continue to utilize the gardens and space. But again, it's not anything where we're trying to, I think go beyond what the scalability of our town center capacity is. The only other thing that we, we do have is the Thunderbird Fine Art and Wine Festival. And obviously that's been around, probably as long, if not longer than a lot of us have been into this community. And it's just part of the community. There's people who have a lot of thoughts on it. I think the best thing we can do with that is it is our established premier event, and we just got to continue to work with the Thunderbirds to make that thing better. And I think they've been trying to take strides in doing that, and we'll work with private businesses and property owners to protect their parking, and we'll find better circulation and parking to handle that and make sure that we can better integrate our brick and mortar businesses into that show. And I think that's the direction we're going to head on that. So now I just want to kind of move into the maximizing retail piece of this, which is, we have three sections where we have opportunities for new development, then looking at our position, and then, kind of how marketing and promotion fits in. And again, I'm going to move through this a little quickly because I know we're backing up against happy hour and other things that people have to do. So if I'm moving too fast, let me know. And if you have questions, please jump in. And so as we look at development opportunities, we do have one existing vacant commercial site at the northeast corner of Carefree Highway and Cave Creek Road. We do have two potential sites that I'm going to be presenting in just a couple seconds here. And then we look at the maximization. As we look at town center, we do have vacant properties, we have underperforming properties. And as far as our tenant and business mix, I'm not quite 100% sure that, we're hitting on all cylinders and maximizing the per square foot revenue that we can maximize. And then we look at redevelopment opportunities, and we don't have tons of those here outside of the town center. I guess you can say that maybe the Shell station would fit into that as part of an opportunity. Maybe the larger one we have would be Mariachi Plaza. And over the next decade, as we look at that, kind of define really, how does something like that, that's, kind of reaching, I think, its maturity as far as a development, maybe, come into, that can be modernized or how we approach that. So that's one thing we'll have to start looking at. The first site, again, that I'm looking at here is that northeast corner of Carefree Highway and Cave Creek Road. This is already zone commercial, and it's 24 acres. And this is one of the few sites where I think when we look at the marketplace that where Carefree fits in as a regional market, bringing in the Dove Valley Ranch and Tatum Ranch, and even maybe as far down as Desert Ridge, where we can have an opportunity to expand upon the regional retail that's already in the area. We already have Lowe's, CVS, there's a Walmart. And so, and then we have had interest and continue to have interest from developers for putting that type of development on this particular site. When you look at the overall potential of the site, we're looking at about a $1.2 million in sales tax potential. And again, this is based on just what I talked about, that, the commercial equivalency. Now, it could be that, and that there may be some office that gets put, especially on the northern piece of this site. But again, when you look at the wash and some just the train issues and how it's angled, the lot coverage is going to be a lot lower on a site like this. But this represents one of the single best opportunities we have in the short run to be able to add on some significant revenue. The next site is the northwest corner of Carefree Highway and Tom Darlington. And everybody drives by this site. It's probably one of the most beautiful as you come in, and it really, for a long time has defined what it's like to drive into Carefree. In total, the site's about 20 acres. And, and as we look at and evaluated this site, and talking with the property owner, and some conversations in and around, for some residents in the area, that really looking at a low density type resort and neighborhood support retail was probably going to be the best use. And when we look at total overall estimated tax potential, we're looking at about $1 million in tax revenue for this particular site. It's currently rural 70. So, as we start looking at how these sites fit in, we are going to have to go through a general plan amendment, which is a major amendment process, and then look at how we're going to be able to put this into the zoning process. My gut tells me that we really take more of a special planning approach. And Stacy, I think she might be on. Maybe kind of talk just for a second about how you envision, taking some of these sensitive sites and being able to take them through a process.
Yes, thank you, Steve. Steve talked about the northeast corner, and fortunately, we've kind of gotten that to a point where now we're really looking for those users. So, and that's why I'm so glad Steve's here. We do obviously have some opportunity to maybe see, modify how that whole development on the northeast corner works, but at least we're really kind of headed in the right direction. We kind of got our start on for that project. This one is really interesting too. I mean, we've talked to the property owner for a long time. We have talked to other interested parties over time, but nobody ever really came in with that right proposal, that right development. I think it's great to see that, you know, I'd always seen it more as just that smaller, well, I don't say small, but it's a smaller 10-acre corner that now has been expanded into 20 acres, which gives us a lot of development flexibility. So similar to the northeast corner, which had what we call the special planning area for in the general plan, I think we should, you know, move ahead with the same and really craft that land use to where we get what we want to see there. And so I think Steve is spot on. I mean, we've talked about hospitality there for sure. Obviously having some retail support would be fantastic too. I think the site in terms of its physical features really is set up really well in terms of buffering from the existing neighborhood. You've got that wash. It almost kind of creates that nice sort of transition so that, you know, because a lot of times from residential to non-residential, it can get touchy, but I think having a physical and aesthetic sort of separation is really helpful and be really to our advantage. So I definitely support and agree with creating something specific to these areas so that we can see what we want to see there.
Thank you, Stacy. And as you look at the site, like the northern parcels on there, those are really rugged terrain.
You got an echo.
Echo.
I have an echo.
Yeah, you're coming in really broken up and you've got a really deep voice.
No, I don't know now.
Maybe get closer to your computer.
I'm pretty close to it right now.
Oh.
Mute Stacy.
Stacy, can you mute your line?
Oh, she is.
Is this better?
No.
Let me
Why don't you come into my office?
Okay. I'll be there in a sec. I think I'm gonna stop sharing my screen though.
No, keep on sharing. We'll just trade offices. And I'll forward the slides from your computer.
Can you do the slides on my computer?
Yeah, just come over here.
Okay.
We're high tech here.
Sound like Donald Duck.
Not even Donald Everman that.
Kind of Darth Vader, I thought.
I was going to say, sounds like a villain.
Yeah.
Witness protection program.
That's good, John. That's exactly it.
John,
All
you
right,
want
so
the dark
I am now
circle?
Gary, and Gary will be Steve, I think. He'll sound like Donald Duck now. Is this better?
Yes.
Yes.
Good looking Gary.
Yeah. Well, okay, so again, as I was saying, the northern two parcels on that site are very rugged. And as you look, there's a wash going through there. So, you know, again, the intensity of development you're going to see is going to be fairly limited. And I think that lends well to the neighborhood anyhow, because I think they're going to want to see a lower density and they'll get some separation. Go ahead and forward, Gary. So the next site, and I do want to say, I saw that Mark Stapp is on listening in as well. This is the state land parcel. And we've actually been in contact with the state land parcel. And I just wanted to just say before that Mark represents Arizona State University's Master of Real Estate and Development program. And they're actually looking at this site as a class. They'll be presenting to the state land this week. And state land is very interested in what they have as far as input. So we'll be listening in on that conversation. So I want to thank Mark for inviting us to that. And then really involving, you know, the town in what's going on with his students. This is a very key site to us. It's total 45 acres. It sits on Cave Creek Road, just south of Sky Ranch. And, you know, the state at this point is very interested in looking at being able to generate revenue. There's a heavy push on the state to take, you know, pieces that are ready to go and sell those because, you know, obviously education funding is a critical thing for the state, and education in the state is funded through state land sales and transactions. So, but again, as we look at this particular site and we look at the overall amount of land available in the town of Carefree to be able to generate sales tax revenue, you know, we're very limited, and this is really the largest opportunity that we have. And so as I start to look in and analyze this and take the input from, you know, the students that are working on the project and State Land themselves and some others, I think that we really need to focus in on how we make that happen here. I don't see 45 acres necessarily of retail happening here, but definitely, as we look at a component of that, and the way I've estimated the tax potential is really just taking about, maybe 20 to 25 acres of this site and dedicating that to some type of commercial sales tax based uses, and then it'll be mixed in with some other, mixed use development, whether that's a residential component or an office component, or maybe it's assisted living component. I know those are a lot of things that we can consider as we look at this particular parcel, and as we look at it, as a whole, maybe there's a good opportunity. That the type of retail, again, looking as we try to develop, again, is one of the things that we're looking at as far as our position as a town, again, looking at resort development and how we play into the marketplace as a resort destination. We really do feel like we can fit into that as well. And so the last site you heard about, we talked about resort, this site resort. And again, we have the Hampton Inn coming in. We already have Savannah and Spirit in the Desert. So, putting something complementary here to those things. And as you know, that when you look at hotel and resort destinations, they tend to be in clusters. And so that's one of the things and why we think this site has some value there. So our next steps will be to kind of listen in on this site to what's going on with the state, what's going to be presented by the ASU folks, and then get together with the state land department and talk about what the possibility is for rezoning this particular site for commercial mixed use. The other area that we have is the town center, and and it's interesting. We do have the Hampton Inn, and so I think when Gary did his analysis, that revenue wasn't necessarily counted because it's not in the budget yet. But we know that we do have that revenue coming in. And then, as we look at, well, I don't have my mouse anymore, so I can't use my pointer, but along Cave Creek Road, we have several vacant parcels, including our own parking lot that fronts Cave Creek Road. And so we do have capacity to actually add additional square footage. And if you look at that, we can probably, if we really maximize it, could do like 60,000 square feet. Not sure that we want to absolutely do that. And then as we look at the types of retail we already have in town, some retail is maybe a little obsolete. Some things are going to be adapted reuse. And so I see a shift over time. And again, we're talking about the next 10 years of some of that retail maybe not being retail, but we have the capacity to add some new retail. And maybe what we add is more four-dimensional stuff like we already have on Cave Creek Road with Frank Andre's building, and maybe we can carry that type of development coming on along Cave Creek Road. And again, we're also going to be looking at, maximizing the existing per square foot, and how the tenancy fits in, how the hotel, the Hampton's going to impact that. And then I just want to say, I did everything that I've been looking at. I've been evaluating against the Baker study and the numbers that they ran. And in the Baker study did show support of 41,000 additional square feet over the next 10 years to 2030. So we're not quite out of line with what the Baker study was showing, and that was done 6 years ago. Things have changed, and so when we look at the overall estimated tax potential, you're probably looking at right around $500,000 to $600,000 over the next 10 years that we can start putting together here. And then just to summarize, when we, the target we had was 3.5 million. It's interesting that when you look at the three opportunities, first three, I didn't plan that. It actually just came out to 3.5 million. And that again, when Gary talks about those numbers, those are ways for us to be able to maintain existing service. But we know as we grow as a community, as potentially we diversify as a demographic, that there's going to be additional needs, maybe for trails, some other outdoor amenities. Every day I hear two people tell me they want a dog park. And so those things are going to be, probably potentially future needs. And so we need to kind of really think about, is 3.5 million the base that we need to get, but we really want to maybe look at how we can expand that to be able to add on new services. What I haven't done, I haven't gone into a full-blown analysis of Mariachi Plaza. And one of the things, we can look at is it going to be part of town center? Is it not part of town center? Is it something that we look at more traditional, neighborhood retail, even like a more of a convenience store type of use? There's just so many possibilities we can look at Mariachi Plaza over time. And it is kind of an odd duck compared to, what's already in town center and, some of the other, retail that's in town. But one thing's for sure, it's been there for a while, and, it definitely is getting to the end of its, I think, economic life. Now, in my conversations with some of the existing retail building owners, when we start talking about adding retail, and especially as we look at town center, how does retail absorption look? And, again, the Baker study, it did have a trade analysis that was completed, and that trade analysis really, though, was focused in on a specific trade area that includes, kind of the North Scottsdale, maybe north of 101, takes the Cave Creek area in, and it's really just more of the general local trade area here. While that study showed that we are going to be, as a town, not growing nearly as fast as some other areas, the trade area itself is actually going to be growing at about 72%. And so when we see that, there's an additional $550 million in sales tax or revenue that's going to be spent on retail, that's kind of up for grabs. And the other thing about the Baker study that it didn't address was what our market share was. And so those are the things that, we need to kind of look at is as we look at the growth of the trade area, as we look at maybe looking at expansion of the trade area, and how we could possibly expand that, and then look at what our market share could possibly be, then we can start to hone in on really what's our possibility of being able to hit that $3.5 million mark with the existing, revenue that's just going to be locally driven by this particular market. Now, we know that may not 100% occur, but that's why we need to also look at as the resort development, and as we look at out-of-state travel and trying to build that economy here, that's definitely going to be a part of it. So this is something that we definitely need to be, conscious about. And as we move forward, I'm going to definitely be looking at how these numbers fit in, and working with the local retail groups and, brokers and developers and actually property owners here, and just kind of validating all of these things. So as we're doing things, we're not harming our own. One thing I did notice with the Baker study, and, and again, it was 6 years ago, was the leakage here is pretty bad. And so I do think we can pick up additional leakage from our own residents that are going to restaurants outside of the trade area. They're shopping in different areas. And the other thing we don't know is obviously with COVID and the resurgence of online shopping, how that's going to impact things. And so those are all the things that we need to start considering as we try to meet our revenue goals. Just because we want something doesn't mean it's necessarily 100% feasible. But I think we're, generally speaking, and looking at the numbers and looking what the opportunity is, I think we're on the right path. Again, our three strongest markets right now that those are the North Phoenix, North Scottsdale, the North Pima, and Desert Mountain. And then obviously, I think we can pick up a larger capacity of tourism and resort, particularly as it gets around ecotourism, and as we start looking at things that really cater to more of an adult crowd. And, Savannah has really reimaged themselves. And so I think we can build upon that. Right, Gary? I want to kind of shift gears, kind of dial in a little bit on town center. And again, a lot of the stuff's just identified in the Baker study. Some of the things we've addressed, we've tried to address, but I just wanted to go after looking at this after the first 6-8 months. I put a report together that I shared with some of the council and staff members, and hopefully you were able to take a look at that. And there's some things that we do really have a problem with. And I think one of them is a sense of arrival. And I grew up in this area, and when I left Phoenix, I grew up in the Moon Valley. When we left the Moon Valley area, I went through a ton of desert. It was really raw. We even caught air on the roads to get here on Cave Creek Road in Scottsdale because they were so bumpy and wavy. And then you arrived at a place called Carefree. And so there was a sense of arrival by the fact that you left someplace and came someplace. But we don't have that necessarily today. When you leave, you never leave Scottsdale. You just drive straight into Carefree, and you don't know where one begins and where one ends. And so as we look at how that impacts things, it actually does have an impact on, does this really feel like a destination now? And so we need to be conscious about that. And I know that's a bigger thing to think about our arrival in town, but town center still has that lack of arrival as well. And I've talked to some folks who say, look, I drove right past this place and then I had to come back, and And I don't like to hear that. And I know we've done some things that, to try to help with that. We did the arches and some signage and those things I think have helped a little bit to be able to set that. And so I think we just need to continue to build upon that, that sense. And then, and then the other thing I want to talk about again is the parking part of things. Is I've done a parking analysis and we don't have a parking problem as far as capacity goes. What we have for the most part is a parking accessibility issue. And we do have some heavy intense uses in certain areas, and maybe it's a mismatch on the total, even though we have the total parking, it's just that it's not convenient for those users at those specific locations. So those are things that I think that we're definitely going to need to start working on. And then again, as Gary mentioned, our town's aging. We're not the young spring chicken in the desert anymore. And our building stock's getting dated. So we'll just have to look at those things and how we can help, either through adaptive reuse or redevelopment for those buildings. And then again, how do we best utilize the existing land that we have? Can you guys hear me?
Now we can.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We lost you there for a minute.
Yeah, I hit enter to move it and yeah. So, the one thing that I think we've always done as a town is we've kind of look at ourselves as government and we look at ourselves as leadership. But at some level, we are a property owner here. We have just as much stake as at some of these other businesses. And if I think we put that hat on and we can start appreciating, what some of these other building owners are looking at, and we kind of put ourselves on that same level and we think of our site here at the town, so I think it's a great, town hall is a great commercial location, that we can start looking at things from a different perspective and really understand it from that level. And so when you start thinking about those things, again, it's this, how do we create arrival? How do we improve signage? How do we make this a great commercial shopping experience? And the garden is just a part of that. It's not the end all be all of why people should come here. They should come here for a complete experience. And I'll tell you, I spend at least 30 days a day walking through our town center, and I see a lot of lost people, and I don't like to see that. And that's actually how, when we start thinking about the ambassador program, I have helped so many people find locations, and the signs are there, the information kiosks are up, but we have a miss. And so the connection's bad, the signage isn't as good as it should be. And if you go to a really highly functioning retail area, you'll see the difference, go to a Kierland or some others. And I think we need to start thinking in that vein about, and I kind of call it the Disneyland model also, that everywhere you look in this community, it's either of something of interest or it looks nice, and every detail is thought through. And so that's kind of where I think we need to start looking at. And then, again, looking at our how do we, our underutilized vacant properties, Los Portales, and then we do have second floor on some buildings, and even some buildings that are successful and nice, like over where the tea room is, the upstairs is vacant office. How do we work with those property owners and come up with real ideas about how we can work together, public-private, to be able to find mechanisms to make those things successful, whether it's redevelopment or adaptive reuse, or just being able to find ways to make the parking more accessible. Those are the things that I think we can focus on. And then again, these vacant lots, they've been sitting vacant for a long time, and there's a reason, and so we just need to address that. And then the other side of it is increasing the number of residents living in town center, and there's twofold to that. One is adding more people, but the other one is making it more accessible to the people who already live here. And I don't think we do a good enough job. You can watch the people take their lives in their hands going across, Tom Darlington and Cave Creek Road, and we already know that that's an issue that we want to address, whether it's traffic speeding or just it's a big right of way to get across. The visibility is limited with things that are on the road. So those are the things that we just, again, how do we make it more accessible so people can enjoy their town a little bit better? Go ahead, Gary. So these are just some recommendations, and I'm not going to, I'll give you a minute to kind of look at these. Again, I've kind of outlined what I think some of the issues are. The recommendations here are really, kind of a comprehensive list of things that I, as in my assessment, and kind of taking the Baker study and really expanding upon that and how we can take this to the next step. And one of the things and key is going to be, I think we need to rethink about what is the town center. And go ahead, Gary, flip the slide. You know, we've always thought of town center as being everything, you know, between Cave Creek Road, Tom Darlington, and Bloody Basin. But when you really look at it, you know, we have higher density housing north of Cave Creek Road. And, you know, and you kind of start evaluating, you know, there's vacant land along Cave Creek Road. Look where town center is, look where the sundial is, you know, is the center really going to be, you know, 100 Easy Street, or is the center really kind of where I'm sitting right now in Town Hall? And can we expand upon that? And you have a question? I thought I heard somebody. And so what you see on the left is that, you know, obviously the aerial, and on the right, just to kind of give you a flavor, one of the things that, you know, we toyed around with, I've had this conversation with Gary and Stacy took the time to just give us a little snippet of a possibility of how we could look at what town center could look like, and you know, and how we can connect the north to the south. And this isn't the all-encompassing piece. And obviously we'd also look at how does it connect on Tom Darlington from the east to the west. But the idea is that we can put, you know, a higher floor area ratio, maybe some 2, maybe even 3-story buildings along Cave Creek Road, that have a limit, you know, commercial ground floor and residential up above, and then put parking on Cave Creek Road itself, and maybe even look at doing the similar thing on Tom Darlington. And this does a couple things. One, it slows traffic down significantly coming into town. 2, as people come through the stop sign coming from Cave Creek, they definitely know they've arrived someplace, and it doesn't look like a 2-lane highway going out to the lake where they just hit the gas and go 50. And it enhances this as a commercial area for viability. And we can actually create better linkages for parking and pedestrian going in onto Easy Street and Spanish Village as well. And I wish we could have expanded this a little bit to include more of Spanish Village. But as you go down, you know, where you have the vacant parcel in front of Spanish Village, you know, you can actually see how this would even be able to incorporate, you know, where you have on-street parking, you walk into the front of Spanish Village off of there, and now it's a cohesive, connected development that goes from Tom Darlington all the way to Cave Creek Road. You know, I mean, obviously, you know, the developer would have to be able to buy that parcel, but it just gives you the idea of how we can solve many problems that the town has and do it in a very thoughtful way.
Steve?
Yep.
In the picture on the right-hand side, make sure I'm interpreting it correctly. My screen is kind of small. On Cave Creek Road through the roundabouts, the hash lines, are they to represent a parking spot? Is that what you're suggesting here?
Yeah, the hash would be on-street parking.
Okay.
So we look at, you know, trying to create, you know, more parking in town center, and make the parking actually a little bit more proximate to where existing retail is, and making it an easy walk to the existing retail. You know, we can look to probably put about 80 to 100 spaces on each side of the road. And so if we wanted to go that route, and then again, you know, what would be included in a concept like this is some type of sidewalk or trail that allows the residents, not only inside the area that's considered town, but, you know, as people try to, you know, walk down their streets and come from different neighborhoods, they actually have a safe place to walk on that goes along Cave Creek Road, again, along with bike paths and everything else. And it just makes the area more accessible for more residents in the community.
That's an interesting idea. I would suggest we do maybe 1 or 2 squares, if you want to call it that, see how well that works for the community and potential buyers, and then you could expand, because obviously it's an expense to the city, but it's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
It does address those issues you described.
Go ahead and another question?
No, this is a comment.
Okay, no, I heard somebody else. I think it was just somebody other mic on. Could Gary go ahead and switch slide, please? And again, here's the reasons why, you know, for resetting, you know, it kind of makes sense. And again, is when you look at how this community was created, I think it was created in this vein. It just was smaller then. And so, you know, as we look at how we've grown, we're not taking anything away, I think, from what the founders of the community wanted. I think we're maintaining that feel, you know, of having some kind of internal town center that has a commercial core and capability, and that was very walkable. And so that's where I kind of want to get back to that. I'm a big
I really hate highways that run through towns. I was in Chandler, we had the same problem with Arizona Avenue. It was just a state highway running through the middle of the downtown, and they've been able to address that. And so one of the things that we're also talking about is the relocation of town hall. Again, looking at ourselves as property owner in the area and looking at how we fit into, being able to solve our own problem. We're sitting on some pretty good land here, and we're not generating any revenue as town hall on this particular site. And so, and even with the parking we have here, it's available parking that nobody ever uses except for the town, and maybe when we have large events, like, but I've watched this parking not get used, even in the evening times when we're really busy and when we've had local activities and events. So, again, I think it's a key site, and whatever we do, and we start looking at opportunities to find, and again, I think Gary and I talked about approximately 5,000 square feet. The things we're looking at is one, can we redevelop something on this site where we can actually maintain an office and be a part of a redevelopment on this site that has mixed use commercial office and maybe even residential as a component to that, where we go through a joint venture, or can we do something like that on the site next door? And then, one of the thoughts that we were talking about is looking at getting the town center or the town hall closer to where the existing council chambers are. And so we can look at that happening, whether it's in the parking area over adjacent to there, or even looking at how we can take the existing town hall, and is there an opportunity to add the additional square footage and combined uses and combined square footage where it makes sense to just, maybe we have everything and services in one location. And the other one thought I have, looking at, one of the things I look at is on Carefree Drive. It's connecting town center and the Basha Center. It's a difficult task. And Carefree Drive, I think, is, when you come in Tom Darlington and it's beautiful, and then you turn on Carefree Drive, it's not beautiful. And it's disjointed. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't represent to me what Carefree really is trying to, be. And, so is there an opportunity to take a site that really has a lot of challenges and maybe in some kind of horse trade, or I don't know how we do it, I think there's a lot of opportunities to look at. Is there an opportunity for us to do a new build on that site there? It's in an area that already has office and will help cement and be able to take, that Carefree Drive corridor and turn it into something that maybe is a little bit nicer and provides continuity and connectivity. All right, go ahead, Gary. Again, looking at the connectivity issues, and again, this was in the Baker study too. I apologize for the crude marker. I tried to use the highlighter thing on there, and it looks worse now than it did when I first did it. But again, it just kind of looks at, part of my assessment of when I look at Carefree is we're kind of like a puzzle that somebody forced a lot of the pieces into, and it made a pretty decent picture, but it's not really the right pieces where they need to go. And again, looking at events that we've had in the town center or at the pavilion and other things, there's just nobody parks in the areas in Easy Street. Now I know we have construction going on, but part of that is it's dark, it's disconnected, and there's no sidewalk. And so those are the kinds of things that, as I start looking around as a consumer, again, I walk through the gardens, but then we don't have things connected. On the bottom left, you'll see that's now called Seolum. It used to be Carefree Plaza. Our as-built for the town center actually showed a connection that connected the garden area to this plaza. Now, an as-built means it's been built. Now, we all know that there's no sidewalk over there. And so I'm, one of the things I'm looking at is what it would cost to do that. And I've talked with the property owner there, and they definitely would love to figure out how do we make this particular center look and feel more like, that where venues is or where the tea room is. And it really should. I mean, as we look at Easy Street, it should be, when we go around that circle, it should look and feel the same no matter where you go. And so that's one of the things I would think we really need to start focusing on. And again, in this instance, the property owner is definitely willing to work with us and how to make that and accomplish that, make that happen. And then, going over, again, we already talked about Carefree Drive, which is on the bottom right. And then the top right, again, this is one of those things where I've stood there a million times. Okay, that's an exaggeration. I've stood there probably a few hundred times, at the kiosk at the pavilion looking down towards Spanish Village. And I have absolutely no idea what's down at the end of that. There's just nothing that compels me, tells me what's going on. And as a consumer, this is, kind of the spine that really kind of joins everything together with 100 Easy Street itself, and Spanish Village, in that area there. And so I think we really, and this was in the Baker study, I think we really, one of the things I want to do is actually go through a charrette process on each one of these, and get input with architects, the property owners in the area, and figure out how do we functionally make this look better. One thing that I don't understand is, and it made sense at one point, but when you drive in and you see, a Spanish conquistador standing on the island, that doesn't tell me anything. It really doesn't. I don't know what that means, other than I know there's Spanish Village there, but missed opportunity to be able to tell people where things are. And so as we look at these key areas, how do we drive traffic both from automotive and pedestrians, and how do we make it easy for consumers to know where they're supposed to be going? The next step is alleyways, and then looking at right-of-way. The top left is actually, that's Spanish Village and the Shell Station. It used to be that Red Robot studio, and that's the alleyway that's there. I think these alleyways are very underutilized, and they're an eyesore. And again, they're not representative of what Carefree really is. And I think we should take a look at opportunities to be able to, again, look at this proximate parking. And are there ways that we can work with the property owners in the area to put parking inside these alleyways, clean them up, and then even where Sundancer Plaza is on the left off Tom Darlington, looking at the right-of-way there, there's a significant piece of right-of-way that's just got some landscaping in it. Can we turn that into, is that something that can become parking as well? And so, all of a sudden now we've added in maybe, 20, 25 spaces, and that helps, with Keelers and some of the other uses that Spanish Village has brought in, and we can bring some more proximate parking to that specific area. Kind of moving on, is there any questions regarding the town center before I move off that? Or any thoughts or ideas or?
I have a question, Steve.
Yeah.
It seems to me that the land behind the council center is a fairly large parking area that's always pretty much empty. And I don't know if it's why we've never used that for anything, for parking, for events and so forth. Do you know?
Yeah, so that parking area is actually owned by a private property owner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we would, interestingly enough, we do have a right-of-way going through that space when you look at the overall ownership. And so it's kind of a weird setup. I've talked to the property owner, and, and I've actually run this concept past him, and he definitely was intrigued by the opportunity that it presents to be able to look at, developing along and putting a frontage on Cave Creek Road. So, so I think there's better utilization than just parking. Kind of moving into our position, and I kind of put this, towards the end of this conversation because, we had this conversation about vision, and sometimes vision and strategic position as a community kind of get mixed together. Who are we? What are we? What do we want to be when we grow up? Kind of conversations. And again, I think, as we set this, we all know that this is a destination oasis in the Sonoran Desert. I think that's what everybody is. And everything I've heard and everybody I've talked to, they came here, they like to be here because they drove away from something and they arrived someplace. And that someplace was a really cool town in the Sonoran Desert that really represents Arizona. And I think that is the thing that we really need to keep focusing on as we look at doing things, that may have a feel of urbanization. Always need to be conscious of that's what our identity, I think, is, and that we can't sacrifice just to be different. So I just want to, as we look at the position, and again, I think we have an excellent opportunity with the assets that we have to be the place that people want to come to. So if I'm in Desert Mountain or I'm in areas around that, instead of heading south on Pima Road, and they just keep going into Carefree. And when they travel, they say, yeah, where do you, oh, I live in the Carefree area. I mean, that's kind of the, if we can reach that level and we can strive towards that, I think we'd be highly successful, especially as we look at adding sales tax. And we can bring more of that here. And so, again, start looking at ways that we integrate ourselves as being the hub. And then again, as Gary talked about, again, we have a huge opportunity. We have a lake, we have open desert, Desert Foothills Land Trust operates here. And I know, John, you've been very active with them. And I think they're doing some really positive things that'll be very positive for the town. And I think we continue to work in how we provide outdoor amenities. And that's only going to further, create our position as a destination that people, when they're traveling from out of state and they look at opportunities to get a real Arizona experience that's close to the airport, this is a good location for that. Paradise Valley doesn't have that. Southeast Valley doesn't have that. So really, I think we have a great opportunity to take that mantle as the true real Arizona experience. And then I do think, we do have a good art community here, and I've talked to the art galleries, and some of them have been around for a while, some of them are new. But I do feel there's a strong commitment, and if we can really foster and build the art piece of what we're doing, art sells for a lot of money too. And we have and we do live in a trade area where people buy art. So, and our last First Thursday, which was the second one of the season, actually was pretty successful. And maybe I just set my sights super low and the bar's been they jumped over the bar pretty high, but I've been pretty happy with the way it's going, and the art galleries have been happy. And so I do think we have a lot to build upon there, and we'll continue to do that. And again, we just focus being on that unique destination that we always have been. We just kind of got to find that again, as we get lost in the shuffle of being, suburbanized by Scotts, as a suburb to Scottsdale and North Phoenix. Marketing and promotion, we'll be hiring a new communications and marketing coordinator. And, and I have my thoughts. And as you can see, they're pretty extensive here in how we're going to be able to market the town. And part of it's going to be, how do we market the town to benefit our businesses? And then part of it's going to be, how do we market our town to get the types of development that we have? So those are the two tracks that we're going to look at. And, we've always focused on marketing to get people here to spend money. And that's going to be a big part of that. But as we look at economic development success, how do I work with our local developers, the local business, our property owners, those who own retail, even office development? How do we get more people to occupy that space? And how do we get the types of tenants that we want to see? And so you're going to see a lot of marketing start to get geared towards that. When you look at our website, we're going to overhaul the economic development page to really have the types of information that those decision makers are making, to help those decisions be a lot easier for them to make. And so that's kind of the two tracks for the marketing piece. And one thing I like about that, and we started, I looked at the Restaurant Association, and the way that they've done it, I think is great. They have a loose association with somebody who represents them. I want to kind of do that with some of these other, we'll call them clusters, our art galleries. We're already doing that with the artists. And then the other opportunity I think we have is with health, beauty, and wellness. And if you look, why fight it? This is, we have it. And when you start looking at how many businesses that we have that really fit into med spa and, hairstyle and nails and all that other, we have a ton of it. And when you start looking at the types of people they're bringing in, it's the kind of people we want to have here. They're kinds of people that spend money. And so, I think it does have a place. And so, and I think there's a strong interest to build a wellness piece to this whole thing, and how that fits in with our position and with our marketing and promotion strategies. And so get a little bit closer with those groups. And just when I put the directory together and just speaking with those folks, they were ecstatic. They would love to start working on things. And so we'll continue to keep working with that. And then again, maximizing, to me, the Sanderson Lincoln Pavilion is going to be huge for our marketing. And I really want to start looking at the idea of considering having a professional run that facility, and see if it's A, a revenue opportunity for us, and B, can they get better talent and shows and activities that can come in that are scaled to the pavilion and to the businesses that fit in with our community. And we can get a lot better awareness out of that, because it's a time consumer. And then, so the next couple slides, I'm down to my last two, I believe, are really the things that when Gary says, was we're looking to put together something to get approved by council. These are the things and activities that are going to drive the next 24 months. One, I definitely want council to work and consider creating a formalized economic development advisory board. I've had one of these in Peoria. I didn't think I wanted it when I first signed up for the job in Peoria. And after 6 months, I realized it was great to have that level of expertise And I think we do have a lot of people who think very highly of this area that could really help us move the needle on a lot of the things that we need to accomplish. Again, Cheryl, I know you've talked about when are we going to keep doing this? And I do think we need to get this, the signage and pedestrian access piece moving forward. And I think we need to do it in context with some of the things I've outlined and seeing, as we make decisions about how we want the town center to look and the area to look, that, we kind of think of it comprehensively, how it all fits together at a macro level as a town, and then as a micro level for town center. And then, I think this is highly critical that we need to start the general plan process now on the 2 parcels identified that are not currently in the general plan as commercial or zoned as commercial, that being the state land piece and then the northwest corner of Carefree Highway and Tom Darlington. It's hard to go out and recruit uses and users for sites that have no opportunity for them to actually be developed that way. And so I think if we're serious about meeting the need to close the gap, we need to put our money where our mouth is and take kind of take the mantle up for getting these things moving forward, because we know it's critical to our future success. So, definitely engage. We've already engaged both of these groups, and I think we have friendly conversation moving forward. I don't think it's something that we're going to see resistance from property owners on, because I think, the state land has the directive to get highest and the best use so they can get the most money for the property. And, and honestly, I think just that northwest corner just makes more sense than rural 70. And then again, when I went back to that absorption analysis, I think we really need to look at getting somebody who's an expert at retail and at tourism and looking at our resort cluster and how that gets developed and figuring out, really what our capacity is. And though I know we do have capacity for that, I think we just, again, as we look at how we look at the numbers, how that really fits together. And again, these property owners, I think the state land's going to want to have a little bit of that understanding as well. And then I think, they had the Baker study, and it was great. It identified ideas and it identified some themes. And we actually have taken up, again, some of the things that were identified in the Baker study, but I think we need to take that down and drill it to the next level and have a real, solid plan that looks at infrastructure, looks at the connectivity issues, looks at overall parking, looks at overall signage, looks at maybe, even revising a master signage plan, looks at the zoning and how we can improve zoning, and all the things that I've presented as it looks specifically to town center, and put together something that has a little bit more substance to it, that addresses these things. And at the end of the day, when property owners can see value into the things and efforts that we're doing, then we can start looking at identifying, measures on how we pay for those things, whether it's through improvement districts or community facilities districts. Again, it all comes down to return on investment. If somebody's going to put money or do something and invest in something, they're going to want to see what that return is. And so I think that's really the next step and level that we need to get to. And I think it's in fairness to the property owners that we have here. Again, we'll continue to work on that northeast corner with Empire, and they do have some developers they're talking to, and we'll continue to foster that. I think, again, it's our quickest path to getting revenue in the books. We've already talked about the wellness and destination strategy. We'll further vet that, work with Savannah, Spirit in the Desert, again, with the Hampton Inn folks, and then even with some of our med spa and wellness businesses and how we really bolster that. And we'll implement the marketing strategy that I outlined in the previous slide. Again, I want the communications marketing coordinator to come in and have a lot of input. So I don't want to get too drastically far down the road and force something on them as much as allow them to have the latitude to be able to put input into things. And then, again, we talked about coordinating sector associations. That's something over the next 24 months. I think it's easy to do. You get these associations, they put leadership in place. Now the restaurant association president is talking to the art president, is talking to the wellness president, and maybe we look at some other, and now we have a loose group of people who, are leading this up, and we get better feedback on what the businesses are thinking. And then again, I talked about evolving the Thunderbird Art Show. I think that's critical. There's people who aren't satisfied with how that gets deployed. And I think that's a lot of the comments they make are valid. And so, again, it's just, I think the show is going to be a great thing. So, let's just keep making it something positive and just keep pushing the envelope to make sure that we're doing everything possible that, that minimizes the amount of people who don't like the event. And that can benefit by it, because it should benefit the community and it should benefit the businesses. And so, and some of them are going to be difficult, but I will push on them to do that. And again, this falls in with that whole process of coming up with a master plan for town center, but working with owners on redevelopment and adaptive reuse strategies. And this is key because as we look at the overall amount of retail in the area, it may just end up being a shift. And so if you look at something like Los Portales again, that may not all end up being retail at the end of the day. And so if that retail comes off the market, that allows the opportunity to maybe put some more functional retail space in place, and then that building has value as something else, but still adds value to the town center. And with that, I think that was the end of it, because Gary just shut me off.
Steve, that's excellent. Steve.
That's outstanding. To me, it's the culmination of the hundreds of conversations and discussions that have been going on over literally since you've been with us in March, and putting it down on a piece of paper and in essence seeking input. And it's the kind of thing that I think we should take out to residents and business owners, and they will have comments and valid and meaningful suggestions, which will trigger another thought. But I love it. I think it's great. And you did an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Super job, Steve.
I would echo that, because it was like all encompassing. You covered everything. It was very well thought out. And the only immediate one comment I would have on the next steps, I think your last slide listed a couple of next steps. I would include the signage discussion that we had and the crosswalks discussion that Cheryl initiated several months ago. And I think both of those have been kind of took a hiatus because of the virus, but we might be sitting here 12 months from now, just like this. And we really should move those discussions forward.
Yeah, if those were on the list, they were supposed to be. I know we did talk about it for a second, but they are included in there.
Okay,
I saw it on the list. I just wanted to, sorry, John. I just wanted to say that we've been talking about all these things for years, and we never knew what to do with it. And you've come in, and I think you've done an amazing job of analyzing what we need and putting it all together in a place with some marching orders that kind of get us on track to start making these things happen. And I just want to say it's a great job, Steve.
Yeah, I would echo that. And I would also say, Steve, the thing that really struck me is, from a technical standpoint, you nailed it. You obviously have an incredible skill set to pull this together, but you captured the character, at least as I see it, and I know a lot of my neighbors, of how we feel about the town, but we don't have the ability to articulate it and put it in a cohesive plan like you've done. So hats off to you. One question to the mayor and Gary is there a way that we can take, I don't know if we want to show that whole PowerPoint presentation, but or some subset of it, and get that out to the public and get these thoughts in their mind so we can get some buy-in. Have Lynn put it out, have HOAs put it out, but let's get that out to the people so they can see what we're looking at.
I agree totally, Tony. That was going to be my comment. That the challenge is, and how we've been, I think, most successful in the past on communicating is to go out with homeowner meetings. We used to have meetings in the council chambers, and we're kind of awaiting what happens on the virus. Hopefully, we'll be able to have some of these kinds of meetings again within 6 months. But I would say as soon as we get a green light or a vaccine or something that happens, and I think the residents would like, and the business owners would like to see the entire presentation. Yes, it's a bit long, and Steve's voice may give out, but we'll try and help. But at the same time, you need to see the whole thing to start to understand what the challenges and what opportunities we have, while still maintaining the character and the quality of life that people want within the town. So I think one of our challenges is how do we communicate it?
Well,
Right.
we could, this obviously this meeting got recorded and we could snip that down to just include his portion and upload it and email a link out so folks can have the presentation. They can view Steve's presentation. We can really talk it up and say, hey, check out this plan, look at what we have. But I also wanted to echo the fact that I've seen Steve in action in dealing, in talking, communicating, not dealing, communicating with business owners. And he really is a bridge builder, and he's done a great job. And that's much appreciated.
Steve, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I certainly echo everybody's commentary. It was a very good presentation, and thank you. Very thoughtful. How much of a challenge do you see with respect to the properties within the town that are empty and addressing the vacancy issues and so forth?
I mean, obviously it's a challenge. I mean, they've been sitting there for a while. I think there's a couple things that will happen. As we start to take our control of our own destiny a little bit with some of the properties that we have, it may define what some of those destinies of some of those other properties are. But as we look at things like zoning and we look at things as far as infrastructure and other things that can happen, not take loss fatalis is, that's obviously the big elephant in the room, as far as town center goes. That there's a lot of possibilities with that particular site. And, and I think that if we can look constructively at how we can work on the, even with the alleyway behind, to be able to find more productive uses with that, how we do the connectivity and how we look at parking a little bit, and create some better parking connectivity. Again, I think there's ways and things that we could done with that building that make economic sense. And maybe it's not having as much floor plate. Maybe it's not 2-story. Maybe it is a redevelopment where, you put maybe a residential use on top of some retail or in behind the retail. I think there is a lot of possibility there. And so, again, what I've always found is we don't get stuck on one thing. We kind of move with the things that we can control. And we have a lot within our control here. And we do have a lot of positive, developers and property owners here. Look at Spanish Village and what Bruce has done with that particular site. And I think there's a lot that can go further, even further. And I know Bruce thinks that too. And so, how do we, but I think it comes down to having constructive conversations with some of these property owners and finding ways that it makes a lot of economic sense for them to do the things that they need to do.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts and comments? It's the kind of thing that you need to think about a bit. Certainly don't hesitate to get back to Steve or Gary or myself, or just to continue the conversations on things that strike you, because it triggers a thought. But I think this is excellent, and I thank you. And let us work on how we communicate and continue to improve and move forward on these, because this fits right in with the plan that Gary and Michael put up before, as where do we go in that pillar, the whole economic development area. But I'm feeling very good about it, that I think we can achieve these economic independence, let me call it that, for the town, and deliver the services without a property tax and without changing the character of the town, and enhancing the services and the goods that people want up in our area and the quality of life.
Hey, Steve, it's
Mayor,
great. It's great work. I mean, it's tremendous work, Steve. And I, for all the time I've been on council, even when I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission, I always had a feeling that we were kind of drifting as a town. And, we talked a lot about chicken and egg, what do you do first? What do you do second? And we just drifted with that. And, we did our best. And that's, wonderful. But what you've done is you've pulled it all the pieces together. And I personally really feel good about this and excited about this. And I just want to thank you and Gary, for making this all happen.
Yeah.
Mayor, just to clarify, next steps, Steve's going to generate a report, a little work plan that he'll share with the council. And the idea would be to adopt the work plan also by resolution. So we have an official policy for the Economic Development Department and some deliverables, and we'll outline the path of where we're going in a summary of this presentation. So that will also be available to the public, and certainly we'll accept comments on that. And economic development is a process, and it happens over time, and it evolves with the circumstances of the marketplace. So this is something that will be modified over time too. So it's not something that is stagnant, it's dynamic. So we will continue to work on this, and this will continue to evolve. And unfortunately, we're in the hands of a pandemic, and hopefully there's better ways that we can communicate with the residents. But once again, any residents that review this can comment through Candace. They can email Candace at candace@carefree.org, and she will share those comments with the council and staff, and we will address them accordingly.
Can I make a couple other comments, Gary? Just real
Sure.
quick. One is, in my opinion anyway, this is the perfect example of why you hire professional management. Even though we're a small town, we can't afford not to. By trying to save a few bucks and keep, I know there's always discussion on staff and all that. You got to have the right people. It takes money to make money. Enough of that. The other thing is, I think it's really critical when we start talking about, moving town hall or looking at options for that and rezoning a couple of those parcels. They're absolutely the right things to be doing and looking at, but it's got to be communicated in context and early in the process so you don't get negative momentum with some residents, because that's the kind of stuff people can grab onto, and it just starts we got to nip that before it starts. And I don't know what the right communication strategy is. I mean, of all people, I'm not out there because of the COVID thing. I'm very paranoid of it, but I don't think we can wait till a vaccine's out there to get this message out. We're talking about amending the general plan starting in March, which is, I totally agree with that, but we've got to get that message out now. What's going on? We need to talk more about that.
We do. I think Vince's suggestion of a video
Yep.
of that and is an excellent one. We need to check into that more, but we need to challenge ourselves to how else can we do it? Maybe we do it at, if we can do plays in the Sanderson Lincoln Pavilion with 60 or 70 people and still be spacing, et cetera, perhaps we can do limited audiences such as that. But I agree totally.
And maybe Steve, if we do a video, you could star in your own video. We could edit it down. But if we do presentations, we can get a group of us to tag team that. It's a very clear presentation. It's not, it wouldn't be that hard to be able to split that up so you don't have to kill yourself doing that.
Is that something we can put on our Carefree website that people can tap into whenever? Attach it in some way? I don't know, but.
I would
And
certainly
I think we'll have to put a full strategy together for communications. And so question number one for the communication coordinator position is going to be, hey, we're going to be going through this general plan process. So tell us what to communicate. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, I think, having somebody else helping on this too is going to be, significant. But
Yeah, obviously this is something that we discussed before, which is what communication channels should we use to communicate some of these complicated messages, and we have some foundational information to affect future decisions here. And when we get this communication person on board, the art of communication and that professional, as Tony has spoken to, is a critical link to engage the citizens. And that's why we're looking at that communication position, is because we have a lot of issues in front of this community that we need to address and engage our citizens. So it's going to be a critical thing that we do in the future. Do we have the answers with the pandemic of how to cure that? No, but we will be seeking, and there'll be a similar communication plan with that professional as with the economic development program, as with the town engineer. All these programs will be brought forth and approved by the town council. So there will be a communication program associated with this in the future. We don't have those answers right now, but trust me, the idea is to communicate this effectively and early as possible. So we are just in the beginning stages of all these conversations.
And Tony, I want to address the other component to your comment, and that is, as communities look at how they make investment decisions with their funds and capital and everything else, most of them are funded through property tax, but there's a sales tax component. And when they look at that, they look at, if I put a park in a neighborhood, if I do something, part of that analysis is, well, what's the incremental value of increase of the property in the area? And so they can kind of evaluate, those things on top of what it brings to the community. When we look at how we do things here, it's not going to be any different. It's just different than how we're funded. And as we make decisions for infrastructure and how things get funded, we got to still be really conscious about how we spend our money and what the return on an investment is. And so as I look at things, that's how I approach it, that things should have a level of ROI that we're comfortable with about how we're spending the money, that the tax, in this case, the taxpayers are really, it's different. It's not just the residents, it's the businesses. And so they should have a stake in how that is decided too.
Absolutely.
Great. Yeah.
Anything else? Any other
Maybe
comments?
one last thing before we go. I appreciate the levity. I picked up on my packet on the September 1st meeting. If you look at page 3, item number 7. Okay, where we talked about the street closure for the Hampton Inn and the View. You have that, Mayor?
I don't. Why don't you read what it is and
It
ask your
says,
question.
Mayor Orico stated that it would sign the project. It was not approved.
Put it with your resume.
That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna post it on my wall.
This is true.
We're all set.
Okay, with that, I take a motion for adjournment.
Make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, excellent. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
In honor of Mr. Rico. Aye.
Thank you all. That was
Thank you.
excellent.
Stay safe.
Keep up the great work. Let's
Great meeting, guys. Thank you.
do that.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Take care.